Hello everyone. I don't know about you, but since lockdown we've been playing a lot more board games because we can't get out and about as much as we used to. So I'm just waiting here to play Nick in a game. I've chosen one of my favourite games. It's this wall game. Well, I've not really played it before, but it looks pretty cool. I'm going to play this wall game, so I'm just going to set it up now. Oh, there's the wall. Let's get that out. Brilliant. Oh, don't know about this. This looks like something the kids are playing with and put in the box by accident. I think I'll just chuck that out. I'll pop that in the bin and we'll forget about that. Great. Now I just have to set this wall up.
Oh, great! You've set it up. I love this game. That's brilliant. But where's Humpty Dumpty? Where's Humpty Dumpty?
It's a wall game. You poke out the bricks.
Yeah, but the whole point is Humpty Dumpty has to be on there.
You mean that round thing with the arms and the legs?
Yeah.
Oh, I threw it away. I thought the kids had put it in the box by accident.
No, that's the whole point of the game. You need Humpty Dumpty there to fall.
So basically, the game's useless without Humpty Dumpty.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the Bible story that we're going to look at today. We've been looking at parables, which are stories that Jesus told to teach us about his kingdom. Now, Jesus is talking to some religious leaders in the temple who are a bit cross with him, and they are questioning why he has any authority. So Jesus tells them this parable to explain more about his kingdom. Listen to another story. A man who owned some land planted a vineyard. He put a wall around it. He dug a pit for a wine press in it. He also built a lookout tower. He rented the vineyard out to some farmers. Then he moved to another place. When harvest time approached, he sent his slaves to the renters. He told the slaves to collect his share of the fruit. But the renters grabbed his slaves. They beat one of them. They killed another. They threw stones at a third to kill him. Then the man sent other slaves to the renters. He sent more than he did the first time. The renters treated them the same way. Last of all, he sent his son to them.
They will respect my son,
he said. But the renters saw the son coming. They said to one another, "This is the one who will receive all the owner's property someday. Come, let's kill him, then everything will be ours." So they took him and threw him out of the vineyard. Then they killed him. Well, what's going on so far in this parable? Parables can be tricky to understand, can't they? But in the Old Testament, God would have referred to his chosen people, Israel, as a vineyard. And the religious leaders would have known that. They would have known that the vineyard stood for Israel. And the man in the parable, the man who owned the vineyard, well, he stood for God. He owned the vineyard. And he had these farmers who tended the vineyard. They would have been the religious leaders whose job it was to look after the people of Israel and help them to live for God. But, they didn't do a very good job at it. And they started to go their own way and not God's way. And God sent some messengers, some prophets to warn them. And those prophets are like the slaves in the story that came to warn the farmers. And what happened then? Well, they got beaten up or stoned or killed. And do you know what? That's how the religious leaders treated some of God's prophets. These very people who said that they were following God didn't even listen to the messengers that God sent. Then what happens next in the parable? Well, the owner decides to send his son, doesn't he? He thinks they'll listen to my son. And what do the farmers in the parable do to their son? They beat him and they kill him. So Jesus stops the story there and he says to the religious leaders who are around him, "Well, what do you think of that?" And they're horrified. They said, "That's awful. Those men should be destroyed and the vineyard taken off them." And Jesus then answers, and he quotes from the Old Testament. And he says, the stone the builders didn't accept has become the most important stone of all. The Lord has done it, and it is wonderful in our eyes. I wonder what he's talking about here. Would you remember my Humpty Dumpty from the game that I threw away and thought it was useless? And Nick told me that actually, without Humpty Dumpty, there was no point to the game. Well, it's a bit like that. With builders, they might find a stone and go, I don't think it's any use. But actually later, they might discover that it becomes the most important stone, the foundation, and without it, everything falls away. And what Jesus is saying here is the most important person in his kingdom is Jesus. And if he's rejected, that's awful. And he goes on to say, that's what will happen. I will be rejected. And you, the religious leaders, are the ones that are going to reject me. And do you know what? That's exactly what happened. Jesus was put to death on a cross and he was killed. Those very religious leaders put him to death and they rejected him and didn't follow him as the king in the kingdom. Well, what about us? Will we follow Jesus? Will we see him as the most important person in the kingdom and live for him? Or will we reject him and say no to having him as our king? Well, this week, the challenge that we have is for you to find something a little bit like my wall game in your house that makes no sense if one piece is taken away. So maybe it's a jigsaw or something like my wall game. And I'd like you to send me a picture of that without the important piece and tell me in a message as well what the important piece is that's missing. And as you're taking out that important piece, I want you to remember that Jesus is the most important person in the kingdom of God, and remind yourself not to ignore him, but to follow him. I look forward to seeing all your pictures. Thank you very much, and bye.